Great Pyramid of Gizeh. Some scientists now believe it was already ancient before the first pharaoh was born. What have we learned about the huge granite spirit stones in the heart of the pyramid? Do they still perform some eerie function?
It appears that the Gizeh pyramids were built as beacons by extraterrestrials as part of a landing corridor ending at the spaceport in the Sinai Desert.
Many now believe our own space program has found a connection between the Great Pyramid of Egypt and pyramids found on other planets.
We may discover that we, in fact, were the Martians.
Experts now believe that the Great Pyramid is finally giving up some of its secrets because, like the Egyptians, we have turned our attentions to the skies. Is there an alien connection? The amazing and controversial answers in this chapter of the UFO Diaries.
The pyramids of Egypt have been the objects of mystery and controversy for thousands of years. Scholars, ancient and modern, have argued over how they were built, why they were built, and who built them.
The traditional view is that the pyramids were built by Egyptians of the 4th dynasty, around 2500 BC, as burial tombs for the pharaohs of that period. But is that view sustainable in light of what we know today? Many experts insist the ancient Egyptians could not have built these marvelous structures. And if they didn't, shouldn't we learn who built them and why?
Archaeologists have told us for decades now that many of the Egyptians of 4,000 years ago worshipped the sun and believed in fantastic beings who came down from the sky to bring knowledge and wisdom to mankind. Is this a clue to the real origin of the pyramids? Do recent discoveries on other planets tell us more about the pyramids of Egypt? Is it possible that these structures were constructed by the same architects?
Could the true nature of the pyramids hold the answer to the mysteries of mankind's existence on Earth?
All of these questions are mere speculation without more evidence that the pyramids are anything more than what they appear to be. 3 gigantic piles of carved stones on the edge of the desert at Gizeh.
The largest has been attributed to the pharaoh Cheops, but it is more widely known as simply the Great Pyramid. Many scientists agree that physically, mathematically, and scientifically, the Great Pyramid of Khufu could not have been built. And yet, there it is, 42 stories high, covering an area the size of 10 football fields, an almost solid mass of intricately fitted stone blocks, each weighing 2.5 to 10 tons. Enough stone to build 35 Empire State Buildings, with several tons left over. Its alignment to true north is almost perfect, and the precision of its construction has never been duplicated.
But could the Egyptians of over 4,000 years ago have built such a magnificent structure? Or should we look for a more advanced civilization behind the pyramids?
The Greek historian Herodotus established the traditional view when he visited Egypt in the 5th century BC and wrote that Egyptian crews of 100,000 men, replaced every 3 months, built the Great Pyramid in 20 years. But is that possible?
To build the Great Pyramid in 20 years, as some archaeologists claim, would have meant setting one of those huge stones every 3.5 minutes, 24 hours a day. That would require a technology we don't have today.
But getting the stones in place was only part of the problem. How did they manage to get these massive stones from the quarries to the building site?
There is a widespread general belief, which Hollywood has helped to promote, that hundreds of thousands of slaves were used to build the pyramids. Nothing could be further from the truth.
The Egyptians of the 4th dynasty were neither a formidable military nation nor a very aggressive one. But even if they were, there were not enough potential slaves within a 5,000-mile radius to have supplied the workforce needed.
But if there was not enough manpower available, how could the work have been done? Even if the builders used some kind of clever machinery to help them get the great blocks into place, Egyptologists still disagree on what kind of device that could have been.
The generally accepted academic viewpoints are divided equally between the rollers and the rampers. These two theories are being taught in the schools right now as facts, when they're not even substantial theories.
With the Ramper School of Egyptology, we are asked to believe that a mile-long ramp was built, rising in slope as the pyramid increased in height. Actually, it would have required more effort to build the ramp than to build the pyramid itself. There would have been some 6 billion pounds of construction garbage to get rid of afterwards.
If the ramp theory is discredited, the remaining explanation is that the blocks were rolled on logs.
But does that theory survive close scrutiny?
Moving a given stone in this manner can be demonstrated, but some rather obvious considerations should have dispelled this notion long ago. The only trees available in ancient Egypt were date palms, and as a food source, it's unlikely they would have been cut down. Importing logs would have required more shipping than Egypt has ever possessed in its entire history, just to transport the 25 million trees needed. Next, it's virtually impossible to roll a log on stone-chip roads. But even if they could be rolled, the great weight of the stones would have crushed the logs to pulp within a very short distance.
The traditional explanations of the origin of the pyramids have been accepted for years. But should we carefully re-examine those long-held notions? The discrepancies between the theories and the facts seem to demand it. Amazingly, the sciences of geology, mathematics, and astronomy seem to reach their zenith with the construction of the Great Pyramid. Construction techniques were used that can't be duplicated today. How could this be? What did the builders of the Great Pyramid know that we don't? More to the point, where did they learn it? And what new scientific evidence is there that suggests an alien connection? The astonishing answers when we return. However the Great Pyramid was built, one thing seems certain. Tremendous power of some sort had to be employed. Since the ancient Egyptians, so far as we know, were dependent solely on muscle power, and that seems insufficient to the purpose, what was the force that put all those gigantic stone blocks so carefully into place?
And keep our minds open to perhaps at some point learning that this is a very real possibility, that other civilizations, other beings, maybe perhaps from other planets, solar systems, or galaxies, assisted the Egyptians in the construction of the pyramids.
Supposing that some traveling race from another world did in fact build the pyramids, did they leave any clues as to the purpose of these structures? Some experts say the answer lies in the foundation and orientation of the Great Pyramid.
It's doubtful that ancient Egyptians had any knowledge of modern geology, and without this science, it's inconceivable that a structure this size could be built which would not crumble from lack of a proper foundation. Normally, it would just sink slowly into the ground. In modern construction, engineers find a settling rate of 6 inches in 100 years acceptable for office buildings. In 5,000 years, the Great Pyramid, weighing 14 billion pounds, has settled less than 1/2 inch.
This engineering marvel does suggest that whoever built the pyramids not only intended for the structures to remain as they were for millennia, but knew how to achieve that goal. And as engineers now tell us, they also knew how to keep the 4 sides of that giant edifice in almost perfect alignment.
In modern construction, if the builders could maintain each side of the 756-foot wall within 6 inches of being perfectly straight, then it would be a tremendous accomplishment. But the Great Pyramid is only off of straight alignment by approximately 1/4 of an inch. That's totally impossible to duplicate in today's modern construction field.
The Great Pyramid is evidence of a phenomenal knowledge of the science of astronomy. They could measure the day, the year, and the precession of the equinoxes. They knew that the Earth was a sphere, and they knew how to compute latitude and longitude accurately.
The geographical orientation of the Great Pyramid of Gizeh is perhaps its single most amazing characteristic. Its sides run almost exactly from north to south, and east to west. The deviation is within 3 arc minutes from true north. How could an ancient quasi-Stone Age culture have been able to determine true north?
And while Europeans would argue for centuries about whether or not the Earth was flat, the ancient Egyptians, or someone thousands of years earlier, had calculated the longitude and latitude of the Earth as a sphere. Could it have been the 4th dynasty Egyptians?
There have been 2 recent hard scientific discoveries about the pyramid in Egypt, which are not consistent with the Egyptologists' presumption that it was a tomb built by a king. Those 2 things are the radioactive dating, radiocarbon dating of the mortar from the top to bottom, which indicates that the top is 1,000 years older than the bottom. Well, the other discovery was the radioactive sand found in 1987 in a set of chambers just behind the Queen's Chamber in the center of the pyramid. We have placed these 2 discoveries together to come up with a very consistent explanation for both. The strange curve, top to bottom, looks like an exposure curve. If you have a radioactive source in the center of the pyramid, the radioactive sand is exactly where we had calculated such a radioactive source to irradiate the pyramid might be found.
Could it be that the Great Pyramid was constructed with what was simply routine technology to a race of beings capable of something like atomic power and interstellar travel?
But as the evidence for an extraterrestrial origin of the pyramids begins to mount, we encounter what appears to be a warning not to explore the matter too deeply.
Because some scientists claim they have encountered a powerful negative force inside the Great Pyramid, a force they called the Curse of the Pharaohs.
The Curse of the Pharaohs story begins in the 1920s when 2 Englishmen, Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon, discovered the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. Among the spectacular riches, Carter and Carnarvon uncovered a tablet on which a dire curse had been written. Death will slay with his wings whoever disturbs the peace of Pharaoh. The warning did not make them nervous, but they were afraid their native assistants might panic and quit. They crossed out any mention of the tablet's discovery from their records and tossed it into the rubble. The whole incident might have been forgotten forever had not some 36 scholars and others connected with the excavation died sudden and mysterious deaths. Carnarvon and Carter were about to uncover the mummy itself when Lord Carnarvon became deathly ill. Although suspecting an infection, doctors were uncertain of a diagnosis. He died before his son reached his bedside, and precisely at the moment of his death, an unexplainable power blackout occurred all over Cairo. Another victim was American architect Arthur Mace, who had been the person to rip out the last piece of wall blocking the entrance to the tomb. He died in the same hotel with the same symptoms as Carnarvon, feverish and in a sudden coma. The morning after Carter had shown his friend George Gould the tomb, Gould awoke with a high fever. By nightfall, he was dead. Radiologist Archibald Douglas Reed was the first to cut the mummy's wrapping and x-ray it. Reed died aboard ship on his way home to England.
According to historians of the Curse of the Pharaohs, an eminent physician and biologist in Cairo, Dr. Ezzedine Taha, claimed discovery of an ancient microscopic fungus that had probably survived in a dormant state for thousands of years, which could be controlled by modern antibiotics. Ironically, before he could prove his theory, Dr. Taha died in a freak automobile accident.
Assuming that the pyramids were built by some race far more advanced than the ancient Egyptians, did they leave behind this strange fungus as a sort of burglar alarm? A measure to keep humans from tampering with the pyramid?
What deadly secret lies in the forbidden heart of the Great Pyramid? Some believe the great granite slabs above the king's chamber, called spirit stones by the Egyptians, once served some fantastic function. Are they still functioning? Could they be the key to the real purpose of the pyramid? Some amazing answers when UFO Diaries returns.
We know that whoever constructed the Great Pyramid at Gizeh built it so that it would last a long, long time. Archaeologists tell us that the structure was originally covered with a protective stone coating, making the sides perfectly flat and smooth. That outer surface was broken apart and used as building materials during the construction of the city of Cairo. But the pyramids themselves still remain unharmed.
And we've already heard how the pyramid is unique among all buildings on Earth in its refusal to settle into the ground, as other giant monuments inevitably must. And we've heard of the curse of the pharaohs, where something seemed to have been at work in killing all who explored too deep.
Apparently, whoever built the pyramid wanted it to be left exactly as it was. But why? What was its purpose? And was its preservation important because they planned to use it again someday?
In the early 1950s, translation was begun on a vast library of cuneiform tablets that had been discovered many years earlier in the ruins of the Library of Nineveh, the oldest written record known to science. One passage of the text seems to describe the pyramids of Egypt.
Sumerian texts are believed to be over 10,000 years old, 6,000 years older than the Egyptians who were supposed to have built the pyramids. But if the Sumerian translation is accurate, the pyramids were already there before the first pharaoh was born.
If all of this is true, then these ancient tablets may hold the answer to the true purpose of the pyramids. Dr. Zechariah Sitchin has spent years studying the mysteries of these Sumerian writings.
Based on evidence provided by Sumerian texts, it appears that the Gizeh pyramids were built as beacons by extraterrestrials as part of a landing corridor ending at the spaceport in the Sinai Desert.
An intriguing and exotic theory. But how could the pyramids be of use to travelers from another world? After all, as large as they are, they're not visible from outer space.
Some people suggested there's a vortex of energy coming out of the great apex of the pyramid, and that it actually expands in diameter as you go higher above the pyramid.
But for this theory to be credible, the pyramids would have to radiate energy, which an ordinary pile of stones simply does not do. But are the pyramids different in this way?
The pyramids are essentially crystalline in structure, and therefore highly receptive to radio-like energy waves or even cosmic microwaves. The Great Pyramid at Gizeh, with its 5 granite slabs above the king's chamber, are what the ancient Egyptians called spirit stone, and they could have been a massive receiver-transmitter tuned to some distant part of the universe of which we are still ignorant.
There's a vortex of energy emanating from the apex of the pyramid, which actually expands in diameter as it rises higher and higher into the heavens. A simple example of this emanating apex energy was first demonstrated by British inventor Sir W. Siemens. When he drank from the wine bottle he brought along, he experienced a slight shock as the bottle touched his lips. The electrical activity intrigued him so much that he took a wet newspaper, wrapped it around the bottle, converting it into a crude electrical accumulator, which most high school science students would recognize as a Leyden jar. Although we don't know why or how, the Great Pyramid seems to be an accumulator of energies.
The only person of record, of authority, who still stands behind the assertion that there was radioactive sand was Dr. Ibram Nawawi, who gave in 1987 a discussion at an archaeological conference in Tennessee where a friend of mine, another archaeologist, literally heard him say with his own lips that they had found highly radioactive sand in the Great Pyramid. This does not compute as a low-tech structure, but something much, much more intriguing.
So might not the pyramids have been exactly what the ancient Sumerian texts seem to claim? A sort of cosmic lighthouse for passing space travelers?
As incredible as this may sound, it does seem to be the first explanation of the Great Pyramids that truly covers all the facts of its amazing construction, placement, and design. But is there any other evidence that the builders of these remarkable edifices were from outer space?
These same Sumerian texts also refer to the Earth as the 7th planet, as if being counted from the outside of our solar system in toward the sun. Since Neptune and Pluto were only discovered in this century, how could the Sumerians of 10,000 years ago have known that the Earth is indeed the 7th planet? According to Dr. Sitchin, no one but space travelers coming to Earth past Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars could have considered Earth the 7th planet.
Has modern science discovered any other reason to believe that the Great Pyramids were not the product of humans?
Our space program may have discovered the most amazing connection of all. Pyramids on Mars that correspond precisely to the pyramids of Egypt. That astounding discovery when UFO Diaries returns. Our quest for the truth about the Great Pyramid at Gizeh has now taken us into outer space, and to the theory that beings from another world may have actually built this colossal monument for their own purposes. And now we begin to make our own voyages to other planets, exploring the vast reaches of our own solar system. But have our meager explorations to date helped us to find the answer to the pyramid mystery, or simply raised more questions?
The fundamental mathematical relationships communicated by the structures at Cydonia are now eerily replicated in the Gizeh complex here on Earth, including the very placement of the Sphinx. Even the key latitude of Gizeh, north of the equator, is now directly linked to the D&M pyramid latitude at Cydonia on Mars, so we can't tell who the builders were. There is a clue, however, and it's in this mile-long, 1,500-foot-high humanoid face. Our thinking now, our team's thinking, is that that face is our face, or what we once were. So in a sense, someday, not now, but someday, we may discover that we, in fact, were the Martians.
Are the so-called pyramids of Mars merely bizarre natural formations? Or are they the ruins of carefully constructed monuments that have been abandoned for many thousands of years? It does stand to reason that voyagers traveling across our entire solar system might place such markers or beacons on more than one world. Even so, the notion of extraterrestrial visitors constructing the pyramids of Egypt may seem to many to be simply too outrageous. Is it not possible, after all, that the ancient Egyptians were simply far more advanced than we previously believed? Don't the theories of alien pyramid builders ignore the ancient Egyptians and any contribution they might have made in the creation of the Great Pyramid? Certainly. But then, the Egyptians themselves seem to have ignored it also.
The Great Pyramid was the greatest single undertaking in the whole history of mankind. And yet there's not one picture or drawing, not one artifact, not one inventory or tally sheet to tell of its construction. The Egyptians left us some 3,000 years of written and pictorial history, covering virtually everything that happened in their culture, from babies being born to plowing and harvesting, building, weaving, sacrificing, praying, embalming, but nothing about the pyramids of Gizeh. Why?
When you enter the Great Pyramid, it's devoid of these hieroglyphs. And the answer is simple and explained by the fact that the Great Pyramid was not built by Egyptians. The Great Pyramid was built by a group of people which are known as Hyksos, or shepherd kings, rulers of foreign countries that came into Egypt and constructed the Great Pyramid with better methodology.
In light of all the new findings, experts seem to be reaching the same conclusion. Could it be that the proof of extraterrestrial visitation to Earth has, for centuries, been right there before our very eyes? Do Egyptian records fail to mention the construction of the pyramids because they were already there when the Nile Valley culture began to flourish? Is this the final proof that the pyramids are the keepers of a mystery that we may never solve? Until that time, the pyramids continue to stand silent and mysterious, refusing to allow their secrets to become a completed chapter of the UFO Diaries. Why did so many American and Soviet attempts to reach Mars fail? What was the strange elliptical object photographed by a Russian probe just before it disappeared? Is someone or something working to prevent us from learning the whole truth about this amazing image on the Martian surface? Would the $1 billion Mars Observer have been able to give us the answers if it too hadn't disappeared. Discover the Earth-Mars connection in this chapter of UFO Diaries.
The planet Mars is next to our own, the fourth world counting out from the sun. Barren, perpetually cold, and with a thin atmosphere of poisonous gas. Surely no intelligent life could survive there. The surface of Mars, we now know, is covered with meteor craters, gigantic mountains, and deserts that reach around the entire planet.
And one thing more. A giant sculpture that many scientists now speculate was created by some unknown race of intelligent beings. And if it is what it appears to be, what does that have to do with Earth? Mars is our nearest and most reachable galactic neighbor, but for some as yet unexplained reason, trying to study this planet has met with failure after failure. Beginning with 2 attempts by the Soviets in 1960, both missions mysteriously failed.
After the problems the Russians had getting their probes to Mars, American scientists started to joke among themselves about some great galactic ghoul that was preventing our missions from getting there too. In November 1964, the Americans launched the Mariner missions to Mars. But as it approached Mars, Mariner 3's camera shroud failed to open, making the camera useless.
It does indeed seem that missions to Mars have met with an unusually high failure rate. But in July of 1965, the American probe Mariner 4 finally brought success and completed the first flyby of Mars. So had Earth scientists at last outwitted the galactic ghoul?
Apparently not. When the Soviets then attempted to actually land a probe on Mars, something astonishing happened.
Everything on the Mars probe seemed to be working perfectly, and then it just shut off.
Could it be that there's something out there that's interfering with Earth's efforts to conquer space? Or is it all just an incredible string of coincidences? Whatever the reason, it was 5 years before the United States made another attempt to reach Mars. But in 1976, the Viking probe began sending volumes of images back to Earth from their orbits above Mars, including these.
Encouraged by the success of the Viking probe, the Soviet Union, with international cooperation, launched a set of satellites in 1988. Phobos 1 never even made it to the planet. At some point it just disappeared.
Phobos 2, the probe that was sent up to look at one of the moons of Mars, apparently encountered something very strange, of which the Soviets had a picture that did surface in the United States.
Of a very massive elliptical-shaped object.
The NASA individuals here that may know about it, of course, would never make a comment on it.
And then it too disappeared.
And 5 years later, the American space probe Mars Orbiter seems to have met the same fate. But what exactly did happen to them?
Many researchers now believe the loss of so many Mars probes cannot be an accident, but a deliberate attack on spacecraft from Earth by something or someone near Mars that does not wish to be photographed.
Could this be true? Has this bizarre string of space disasters occurred because we caught a glimpse of something we were not supposed to see?
Has the Viking space probe presented us with a mystery that is unsolvable?
The mystery first began to unfold in 1976, when the unmanned Viking space probe was going about its highly successful mapping mission of our neighbor planet.
When the images that were transmitted back to Earth began to be analyzed, this surface feature in the region designated as Cydonia caught the attention of people all over the Earth.
The initial official reaction from NASA about this photograph is that it was just a trick of chance sunlighting. Certainly no one believed that there was a huge carved face on the surface of Mars. Besides, who could have made such a thing? No one believes in the science fiction version of men on Mars. And we know that Mars is not capable of supporting intelligent life as we know it. So the idea of this being a creation of intelligence was not even considered by NASA. Despite all of this, when the image was first recorded, it was labeled head.
But fortunately, the story doesn't end there. The picture caught the eye of image analysis experts Vince DiPietro and Greg Molinar.
DiPietro and Molinar undertook the colossal task of discovering what the strange picture really showed.
At first, they just enlarged the photo and considered there was nothing there at all. So Vincent DiPietro and I designed a computer program to enhance the image in much more detail than NASA had done.
And even though their new process resulted in images as convincing as these, NASA apparently continued to insist that the image was nothing more than a trick of the light. And to prove it, they said that Viking had photographed the same area from a different angle, and that there was no face visible in the second photograph.
Then we went through the archives to see if there was any other satellite passes over that same area. NASA said there wasn't at first, and we looked through their archives and found one. And there, just as before, there was a face with a higher sun angle, showing more detail than before. And images of the eyes showed pupils, and of the mouth area showed teeth. We were very impressed.
Now there were two photographs of the head. Was this proof the image was built by intelligent beings? Did this second photograph solve the mystery, or was it only the beginning of an even greater puzzle? A puzzle with one of the most important pieces found on Earth. The startling answer. UFO Diaries returns.
These two separate frames, identified by their NASA frame numbers 35A72 and 70A13, also contain considerable detail about the surrounding area, revealing several other images that DiPietro and Molinar found as exciting as the mysterious face.
About 10 miles away from the face is a couple of pyramids. And the strange thing about those pyramids is they're very regular triangular shape. And in the corner of each corner there appears to be a buttress, and on close examination the buttress itself is pyramid shaped.
Was this undeniable proof that an intelligent race had once lived on the planet Mars?
This would be really, really remarkable for this to be a natural formation.
Since the time of that discovery, science writer and consultant Richard Hoagland has worked tirelessly to discover the whole truth about the mysterious Cydonia region of Mars.
A member of our team, Dr. Mark Carlotto, decided to use a state-of-the-art 3D computer modeling technique which now strongly indicates that the face could in fact be a real three-dimensional human-looking sculpture, a sculpture 1,500 feet high and over a mile long.
But is it not still possible that these intriguing shapes are really nothing more than accidents of nature? That the researchers who study them are simply letting their imaginations run wild?
Many intriguing questions are raised by the apparent connections between this image from the planet Mars and ancient structures here on Earth. Perhaps the most intriguing being, does this image on the surface of another planet give us important clues to the origins of ancient structures on our world?
Richard Hoagland's study team may have uncovered proof that one of our oldest relics was not built by human hands.
And as I began looking at some references and books and talking with colleagues, this was a sketch done by Shannon, one of our early artists on the team, we both realized that this image was somehow trying to tell us something profound. It was trying to say this.
Could the resemblance between the face at Cydonia and the Sphinx at Gizeh be more than a mere coincidence?
And if not, does all this prove once and for all that these great monuments were all designed and built by an intelligent race from another world?
Did the Egyptians, in fact, as we know them, do this remarkable structure?
Recent archaeological and geological discoveries demonstrate that the Sphinx is at least 10,000 years old and maybe even older.
That is, the Sphinx appears to be much, much more heavily weathered than we have any right to expect from only, quote, 5,000 years of desert weathering. The kind of weathering we see on the Sphinx is best explained by the action of running water. You need rain to get that degree of erosion, 12 feet of it in some places. And that amount of rain has not fallen in Egypt for at least 10, maybe 15 or 20,000 years. Now that raises a wonderful problem. It means that we're now looking at a monumental work of art created at a time when nobody else on planet Earth is supposedly able to do anything of that magnitude or scale. There's no other contemporary civilization to pin it on. So who did it?
Could these both be ancient sculptures made by the same race of beings? If so, who or what is this face intended to represent? The key to understanding the face on Mars may lie in the fact that the Sphynx of Egypt is a combination of hominid and feline, half man, half lion.
It was at this point that we began to worry less about the ultimate reality of the so-called face on Mars and more about the meaning of the message of Cydonia.
An astonishing discovery when UFO Diaries returns. Hoagland's researchers, in comparing the two images, made an amazing discovery.
Maybe there's a connection. Maybe the face of Cydonia is half man, half something else.
First, they copied the left half of the Cydonia head, made a mirror image of it, and pasted it onto the other side.
That's the Cydian half.
The results were interesting, but inconclusive.
Wouldn't it be wild?
However, when they tried the same thing with the right half, flipped it over and matched it up on the left side, the result was a clear image of a lion's head.
Are these merely strange optical illusions, or are they the key to understanding the real truth behind our own past? Surely it's still possible that mere coincidence could be the culprit behind all of these so-called connections between monuments of Earth and the images we've seen from Mars. Or is there any more and better evidence?
In southwest England, the ancient man-made mountain of Silbury Hill has loomed over the horizon since time immemorial. Nearby is Avebury, believed to be a fortress centuries old, tall earthen walls protecting an inner mound. The area also contains an amazing connection to the structures at Cydonia. The connection here was determined not by simple observation and supposition, but was founded in the solid facts of geometry. The question was, what if the ancient ruins in England corresponded in size, shape, and dimension to the features on the plain of Cydonia?
What if the Avebury circle was to represent the crater and Silbury was to represent the tholus, and the angles and positions of ancient features, including where the cliff would be and where the tetrahedral pyramid would be, and angles to other key things in this vicinity, all seem to match, including the very size of Silbury Hill in terms of its exterior moat in reference to the tholus.
Were all of these structures built by the same race of beings, human or otherwise? And if so, does this constitute new evidence that intelligent life could have once thrived on the planet Mars?
Richard Hoagland suggests many possibilities.
One is that we had a previous high-tech civilization on Earth which developed spaceflight, went to Mars, built some stuff, and then collapsed. And we're now just rediscovering our heritage. The second hypothesis is that someone else from far out there, in the stars, thousands, hundreds of light years away, came to the solar system, came to Mars, built the stuff, and built a monument to this primitive being that would someday become a human being, the human species, here on Earth.
In either case, it would seem that some global catastrophe forced the Martian population to abandon their world and move to another, to the Earth.
And someday, we may discover, in fact, that we are the Martians after all.
Assuming for a moment that there once was a flourishing race on Mars and that they built this complex structure, one important question remains. Why?
Cydonia was probably constructed to communicate some very fundamental information. We believe now that we are looking at the outlines of a whole new physics, how the universe functions, a kind of a grand unified theory, as it were, given to us, communicated, even on the photographs taken by Viking, by the geometric layout of the structures.
Researchers now believe that the key to understanding the geometry of the DNM pyramid may be in the size, shape, and position of the massive structure. Hoagland and others point out that the pyramid is not oriented to the Martian North Pole, but is turned slightly to one side. Latitude lines show that two of the faces are out of alignment at exactly the same angle, 19.5 degrees.
Why 19.5? That on every major and minor planet that we have flown by, looked at, or mapped in the last 30 years through NASA imagery, the major disturbance, starting with Jupiter and the Great Red Spot, lies just about at 19.5 north or south.
The Great Red Spot on the planet Jupiter is essentially a giant cyclone, an atmospheric storm larger than the entire planet Earth. It continues to churn away for year after year, right at 19.5 degrees south. Hoagland asserts that on every planet in our solar system, there does seem to be some kind of major geological or atmospheric disturbance found at 19.5 degrees north or south, including our own gigantic volcano, Mauna Loa. Colossal power rages up from the center of the Earth, emerging in the Hawaiian Islands at 19.5 degrees north. Does this suggest that the builders of the DNM pyramid recorded in its structure a sort of key to the inner nature of every planet in our system, including our own? According to Hoagland, the builders of the monuments at Cydonia had a reason for leaving the number 19.5 encrypted in a pyramid.
This is a four-sided, four-cornered object termed a tetrahedron. Because if you put this structure in a sphere, it predicts some remarkable phenomena.
Hoagland says that if a perfect tetrahedron or pyramid is placed inside a sphere such as a planet, so that one tip is at the north or south pole, the other tips will fall at the latitudes of 19.5 degrees north or south, the same as the angles discovered in the DNM pyramid. Was this giant tetrahedron built on the plains of Cydonia to help future generations understand the sources of power within their own planets?
If these discoveries truly are the long-awaited proof that there once was intelligent life on another world, would it not seem reasonable that we try to get a closer look at the Cydonia region of Mars?
And in 1992, an attempt was made to do exactly that, but with strange and surprising results. The bizarre puzzle of the Mars orbiter when UFO Diaries returns.
On September 25th, 1992, one of the most sophisticated space probes of its kind was launched into outer space. The Mars Observer was designed and programmed to approach, photograph, and carefully study the red planet in far greater detail than ever before.
Then on August 21st, 1993, at precisely 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the radio signals from the Mars Observer stopped. The Mars Observer probe, over 17 years in the making at a project cost of nearly $1 billion, had gone silent, suddenly and completely. But why? Was there a simple malfunction, or is there more to the mystery than that?
The Mars Observer mission may have been doomed before it even left the ground. Hurricane Andrew hit the coast of Florida just about the time the Mars Observer was being prepared for launch. Even though it had been prepared for such an onslaught, technicians checked the probe to make sure that it had not been damaged by the storm. The nitrogen system was equipped with special filters to prevent such dust and debris from being taken into the system, and the cameras were in a separate compartment. In spite of this, bits of paper and dust and debris was found in both compartments. It looked like someone had swept the floor and taken the dustpan and dumped it in those compartments. It's unlikely that Hurricane Andrew would have been responsible for all of that damage.
But if not the hurricane, then who? Why would anyone wish to sabotage a photographic expedition to Mars? Could this be because someone or something doesn't want us to get a closer look at our neighbor planet? And if that's true, what is the secret they're trying to protect?
There are many experts now who believe that the forces protecting a secret on Mars may not be on the red planet, but here on Earth. Since the first television cameras flew with space missions in the mid-1960s, NASA has always shared its video images with the world. But many sources report that just before the launch of the Mars Observer, NASA announced that for the first time ever, they would not allow any images sent back from Mars to be broadcast on live TV.
Why? Why would the National Space Agency suddenly change a policy that had stood for almost 40 years? Had they learned something about Mars that they wouldn't admit?
NASA has had a long, very close relationship with the Department of Defense, so they have been, I believe, under a lot of national security restrictions, and there is very much evidence, I believe, of backtracking and coyness on behalf of NASA and their involvement with UFOs.
Like all government projects, if they don't have an answer, they don't want to be embarrassed, so they keep everything secret until they know more about it.
The Mars Observer might have given us definitive answers to the question of intelligent life on Mars, and it might not have. But as of now, the Mars Observer appears to be lost somewhere in the vast reaches of space. Could it be just the latest victim of the galactic ghoul, or is there some other explanation?
Stanley McDaniel, author of the McDaniel Report, believes there is a very practical explanation.
But some people have speculated that NASA is afraid that it'll lose funding if it even so much as hints that it might imagine that there are extraterrestrial artifacts on Mars or elsewhere in the solar system. I think they believe that Congress would think this was so far-fetched that they would withdraw funds.
There are still so many questions left unanswered. Is this space just a natural formation, or was it constructed by some long-lost civilization? And what of the pyramids of Mars? Are they ancestors of the pyramids of Egypt, or just uniquely shaped piles of frozen Martian soil? Is the perfect geometric precision found in these surface features of Cydonia nothing more than a bizarre series of coincidences? Could it be that we are descendants of ancient Martians who sought refuge from their own dying world? If so, does that mean that we are the Martians we claimed we might someday meet? As scientists plan future manned missions to the red planet, are we on the verge of learning that Mars is not only our destination, but was also once the beginning? Is this a portrait of the being who long ago made the very first entry into the UFO Diaries?
In December of 1965, residents of Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, not only saw, but actually found what many claim was a vehicle from outer space. The object was clearly seen not just falling, but appearing to land in the woods nearby. Within 2 hours, armed military forces of the U.S. government literally invaded this small Pennsylvania town, retrieved the object, and hauled it away. What was it that fell or landed near Kecksburg, Pennsylvania? Does the U.S. government have an authentic UFO in its possession? We'll attempt to discover the truth in this chapter of UFO Diaries.
30 years, Kecksburg, Pennsylvania has been a town divided by a bizarre controversy. Many of its citizens claiming that nothing out of the ordinary has ever happened there, while other residents claim that in December 1965, this Westmoreland County village was briefly the home of a crashed UFO.
What is the truth about this strange metal object that witnesses say crashed in the woods near Kecksburg? And why do some of them say the local people were ordered to keep quiet about what happened? Was it because they'd stumbled across some top-secret government project? Or because they'd seen an object that proved the existence of intelligent life on other planets? To learn the truth, we must return to that December afternoon in 1965.
It was approximately 4:47 p.m. when the object impacted in the woods at Kecksburg. There are a number of local residents around Kecksburg who saw the object get down into the wooded area. While none of these people reported any type of sound of impact, almost momentarily there was a column of blue smoke that rose up out of the woods.
According to the eyewitness accounts, Kecksburg residents soon rushed to the spot where they now saw smoke rising through the trees. There, they say, they discovered a metallic object partially buried at the bottom of a ravine, still smoking from its long descent through the Earth's atmosphere. Kecksburg resident Jim Romansky says he was one of the first to locate the object at the bottom of a densely wooded ravine.
Here was this large metal object in front of me. I've described it as a large acorn. And the reason I say the acorn is because around the bottom of this object there was a bumper that went the whole way around this thing. It was dented and it had a very distinct color. I mean, this thing was a bronzish, copperish, steel. It was a color that it's very hard even to describe.
Then, according to Romansky and many other witnesses, armed U.S. soldiers arrived with trucks and other heavy equipment.
You know, the military started coming in. We were under martial law. Jeeps, trucks everywhere.
Down through the woods come two guys. Trench coats, crew-cut hair, straight as ramrod. He looked around, he looked at the object, he looked at us, and a very authoritative voice told us that this area is now quarantined, it's restricted, to get out.
According to Romansky and many other witnesses interviewed by Stan Gordon, the object only remained in the ravine for a few hours because the soldiers who had so quickly arrived on the scene then recovered the object and took it somewhere else.
Here comes this big flatbed truck, tractor trailer, okay, two-piece job. And on the back of it, it either had either a tow motor, that's one of those things you lift things with, or a front loader. The back of this flatbed, they had this big tarp on it, and it was stretched down around this object. And it had the same outline. In fact, I know I could see the bumper under this tarp because you could see the shape of this thing. The tarp was pulled so tight that you could see the shape. And I knew in my mind that was what they brought down off that mountain, the object.
Military truck with a flatbed trailer with the object on it departed late that evening from Kecksburg. And from information we now have, the truck continued on and it went to Lockbourne Air Force Base in Columbus, Ohio, where it stayed over for a short period of time. From there, it went over to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. It seems very likely that our government had tracked the object and they had notified the quick response recovery teams that are involved in this type of operation.
But since the object was apparently taken away, never to be seen again, it might seem that as far as the residents of Kecksburg were concerned, the incident was over. But according to a number of the eyewitnesses, the most terrifying aspect of their encounter with a UFO had really only just begun.
John Murphy, who was the news director of WHJB, felt that the story concerning the object at Kecksburg was of great importance. So he did a lot of investigation on the case and interviewed a number of witnesses who had been involved or had knowledge about the incident.
What exactly did you see?
Well, I saw there was an object falling and it was burning.
Is that exactly what you saw?
Yeah, it was in the shape of an acorn. It was falling from the sky on fire,
and it came down very smoothly and then landed in the woods. And it had some sort of writing of some sort. We couldn't figure out what it was saying.
Writing, are you sure it wasn't like Japanese writing or something?
No.
Chinese?
Nothing I've ever seen. Nothing. Very different.
Are you sure this is, you're saying it's a spaceship now, not anything that...
Absolutely.
It was very bright.
Absolutely.
So what is the situation here on the home front around here with all the soldiers?
The alien ship.
We don't know what's happening, so it's very frightening.
According to the witness accounts, something seems to have badly frightened a good many of those who had seen the unidentified flying object and who had witnessed its recovery by the military.
This is John Murphy. We're going to cut for a quick commercial break. Hello, this is John.
Hi, John.
Hey, Sally, how are you doing? That was a great interview yesterday. You and your son did a good job.
You can't air that.
Why?
Because I made a big mistake.
Oh, hold on.
It's just not the right story.
What?
Well, people make mistakes, and I was wrong. Thanks a lot. Bye.
And we're back.
It seems as though something must have occurred between the time of the interview with John Murphy and the time that the radio special was to be aired, because of the fact that these people were willing to be interviewed, and then suddenly they decided they didn't want their name or any information aired with this report.
Why? What happened to cause the witnesses to refuse to make their testimony public after they'd been so willing only hours before?
I think these people knew that something had come down, and the military presence was so strong that night that a lot of people who the military knew, seen something or lived real close to it, was either told to be quiet or were bought out or something.
You guys listen up. What you saw out there in that field, it was nothing. Erase it from your memory, okay? Don't tell your mom, don't tell your dad, don't tell anyone. You got it?
The government does have an official policy on UFOs. They are not vehicles from any other planet. But they do know that some UFO sightings actually are piloted by alien life forms.
What are you doing?
What
What are you doing? This is our town.
So one likely explanation for the behavior of the military at Kecksburg is that they knew they were dealing with a spaceship.
But is there any way to prove that the object in the woods really was something not made by human hands? More remarkable clues to the true nature of the Kecksburg object when UFO Diaries returns.
How can we learn the real truth about what landed in Kecksburg in December 1965? Is it possible that we are in fact on a wild goose chase, pursuing the truth about an event that never really happened? Many local residents agree that something fell to earth at Kecksburg, but some claim that government soldiers did not hurry to the scene or retrieve an object from the woods.
There has been some debate over the authenticity of the event at Kecksburg, that nothing fell at all in the woods that day, that what was seen was only a meteor.
But Jim Romansky says he has maintained for 30 years that the meteor story was the one given to some Kecksburg locals by the military.
Someone said, hey, what the hell was that up there anyhow? And the guy hollered back, oh, it was a meteorite. And I looked at one guy and we both bust out laughing. We knew it was no meteorite.
Along with orders to stand by that explanation.
You understand what he's saying? Good. I hope you do. Because if you don't listen, I'll kill you.
With a 30-year-old debate dividing those who were in Kecksburg at the time, is there any way for us to really know the truth about the object that landed in 1965? After all, we don't have the object to examine. But is it possible for us to learn the truth by eliminating the explanations that simply do not fit the facts?
As a researcher of this case and other type of UFO phenomena, it's always our position to try to find a logical explanation for what people see. I think, first of all, we can rule out the fact that the incident in Kecksburg is a hoax. Something did occur there that night that created a lot of activity, and the fact that the military apparently responded in the way they did indicated the fact that this was something that was important to our government and military. the bright fireball object was reported first in Canada, then over a number of states, including Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. So a lot of people did indeed see something.
But does the sighting of a falling, flaming UFO prove that it was some kind of manufactured object? Or might it not simply have just been a meteor?
Meteors are pieces of rock and other debris that burn up by friction in the Earth's atmosphere, and normally moving at a very high rate of speed, thousands of miles per hour. It seems that whatever the object was here, it made several different turns, unlike that of a meteor, which would normally move on a straight path. Those people who observed the object before it impacted indicate the fact that this object was moving very, very slow, almost gliding in, and indicated the fact that even some of the flames around the object could easily be seen individually.
A flaming object that made a controlled landing, a metallic shape without joints or seams, strange markings, unlike anything on Earth, the rapid military deployment. If all these clues are based on fact, do they indeed add up to describe a vehicle from another world?
There are a number of witnesses from around the Kecksburg area that indicate the fact that the military began to arrive in the area probably within about a couple of hours after the impact. The military apparently did not all arrive at the same time, but they periodically began to come into the area, indicating that they may have arrived from different locations. It's highly unlikely that military personnel would quickly respond to report of a meteorite. This is something that would commonly be done by civilian scientists.
But according to Jim Romansky, the military not only arrived quickly, but immediately took over a central building for their own purposes.
And as we approached the fire hall, I mean, man, you'd have thought there was an invasion going on. I mean, there were jeeps and cars and trucks parked all over the place, all military, okay? And there were uniforms everywhere. And as we tried to approach the door to go back into the fire hall, there were 2 armed sentries or guards, whatever you want to call them, standing there. And they refused us to go in that fire hall. In fact, one of our guys asked to go in and go to the bathroom. And they said, see the weeds over there? Go. It reminded me of some of the war pictures I've seen where these people, military people, come in and declare martial law.
There are numerous documents that indicate the fact that the United States government has had in place for many years a system for handling the recovery of space objects that safely re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. It is very likely that the specialized recovery teams would only have responded if there was something of great importance to the military. This would have been most likely, 1, some type of foreign space device that had landed on our territory and they would like to have studied, or 2, that this may have been something more unusual, such as the possibility of an extraterrestrial spacecraft.
What is the official U.S. military answer to all of this? Do they say that the object recovered at Kecksburg is some top-secret spy satellite that accidentally dropped out of orbit? Or do they admit the possibility that it might be something not of this Earth?
Stan Gordon tells of his quest for the answer to that question from the files of the Air Force's 662nd Radar Squadron.
There are indeed records that indicate the fact that there are specially trained intelligence team military personnel that are on call to quickly respond to crashes of space objects that survive re-entry of the Earth's atmosphere. The 662nd Radar Squadron was assigned as a NORAD surveillance site, and Air Force documents verify the fact that at least a few personnel of that squadron were directly involved in the investigation at Kecksburg that night. However, when we look at the historical records for December of that squadron, there's no entry whatsoever of any activity on that day. That leads us to believe that this mission was classified and the paperwork went up the ladder somewhere else. The question is, why, after so many years, is our government still not telling us all the facts it knows about the Kecksburg incident? What is so secret about what they found at that location that even today they refuse to comment about the incident?
It is not disputed that the military gathered up and hauled something away. But what was it? The mystery would take on a new and more surprising twist when reports of a secret Russian satellite suddenly began to surface. Could the episode at Kecksburg be fallout from a failed Russian space launch? More astonishing developments in the mystery of the Kecksburg incident when UFO Diaries returns.
There seem to be only 2 viable explanations for the object that crashed at Kecksburg. Either it was part of a top-secret American or Soviet satellite project, or it was some sort of vehicle from another world.
Remember that by 1965, both the United States and the Soviet Union had the capability of putting nuclear weapons in orbit, and each was desperate to learn about the technology of the other. These rockets had segments that were jettisoned in flight and that fell back toward the Earth, presumably to burn up on re-entry. This practice has continued to the present day, and we now know that sometimes large parts of these space vehicles do not burn up entirely. Occasionally, a rather large fragment will actually reach the ground intact.
There has been a treaty on the books for many years that if something of foreign origin would fall on our soil, we would recover it and give it back to the launching country.
Remember that the American military would have been very interested in recovering a Soviet probe such as Cosmos 96. It would have told a great deal about Russian technology at that time, particularly if there was any reason to believe that the object was part of a Soviet weapons system equipped with nuclear missiles.
But it may be now that after so many years, and the fact that both governments now are on a much more cordial level, the fact that they would rather just overlook the incident and forget about what happened so many years ago.
Could the Kecksburg object have been a Soviet missile system, even a nuclear weapon that accidentally fell to Earth?
Weapon-bearing satellite systems are not designed to make soft landings. If indeed the object that came down in Kecksburg that day was a part of such a weapon system, it first of all would not have made a soft landing, and secondly, most likely there would have been massive destruction in that area.
Cosmos 96 was launched on November 23, 1965, but its booster failed
on the same morning of the Kecksburg incident, and that occurred in Canada. There are indeed some similarities to the shape of the two objects in question.
There was a tiny bit of resemblance, but that's where it stopped.
Was the Kecksburg UFO a failed Soviet Venus probe? If so, does this also explain the strange hieroglyphics seen on the object by more than one witness?
I mean, it was like circles and stars and dashes and all kind of markings on it.
Writing, you sure it wasn't like Japanese writing or something?
No.
Chinese?
Nothing I've ever seen. Nothing.
The external markings or identification markings that we have seen on many of the Soviet probes at the time would look very unusual to people who are not familiar with the Russian language or the type of lettering. And in fact, if the object had re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, there could have been some scarring and burning, and they could have looked somewhat distorted from the re-entry.
My dad is originally from Kiev. And I went to him one time and I said, Dad, I says, you could read and write Polish and Russian. He says, yeah. I said, write me something in both dialects. He says, what? I said, just write me anything. The Polish and Russian writing that I seen doesn't come nowhere near it.
And yet the simple fact that Cosmos 96 did fall to Earth on the very same day as the Kecksburg incident is still sufficient evidence for many people to believe that they were one and the same. Then again, according to Stan Gordon, perhaps we shouldn't make up our minds just yet.
We have to look at the possibility that, one, that the object in question may have been man-made, possibly Soviet in origin.
I mean, the Venus probe, you had seams, you had pieces sticking out, you know, it was that quick that I could look at the picture and say, it wasn't it. Because I've been a machinist for almost 30 years now. And I've cut a lot of metal. And I've never run into it again, never.
Surprising new evidence that may show where the Kecksburg object came from.
This could have been an extraterrestrial spacecraft.
When UFO Diaries returns. The object that crashed in the woods at Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, has been the source of controversy and speculation for 3 decades. But are we at last approaching an explanation? There do seem to be many reasons to believe that the fallen Russian space probe, Cosmos 96, was the object seen by so many on that December day in 1965.
Particularly since we know that Cosmos 96 did crash on Earth on that day. But we must still consider several other important facts about Cosmos 96.
The Cosmos Venus probe may have been a lot smaller than what people described at the site of Kecksburg that day. This appeared to be a one-piece structured object. They didn't see any rivets or bolts or seams on it. And in fact, they mentioned no type of external apparatus for sensing different types of information, which is very apparent on many of the Soviet space probes. Documents from both the U.S. Space Command and the Naval Surveillance Center verify the fact that Cosmos 96 did re-enter the Earth's atmosphere at about 3:18 in the morning in Canada.
And yet, without the object itself, there can be no final proof. Is it possible that it still might be held in some military storage facility? And if so, where? We've already learned of one attempt to trace the object's recovery, and how that search led to a dead end.
The Russian embassy indicated the fact that they had no knowledge that Cosmos 96 or any other Soviet device had crashed in Pennsylvania on December 9th, 1965. Information obtained from the United States government indicates the fact that we had no re-entry of any American space debris or any type of weapon systems that could account for the crash at Kecksburg on that day. The official document obtained from the U.S. Air Force's Project Blue Book, which was their UFO investigation program, stated that the object which was involved with the Kecksburg incident was a meteor that had been observed over a large area.
All I can say about that is the people that are saying this are lying.
When we look at all the explanations for what we have concerning the Kecksburg incident, I believe we can roll out a hoax, we can roll out the incident involving an airplane crash, so we have to look at what possibilities still exist.
Oh, I think it was a UFO.
And our most likely explanations would be that we're dealing with either a man-made space probe.
Like nothing we've ever seen in this world.
So you're
Very
saying
different.
definitely this is an alien ship?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh yeah, definitely. From someplace other than here.
If we can eliminate those possibilities, then we have to deal with the fact that we might be dealing with an actual extraterrestrial spacecraft. Investigation to the incident at Kecksburg continues. And until we have more information, this is only speculation as to what the object might really be. Something did indeed fall from the sky that day in December of 1965 into the Kecksburg woods. The military responded very quickly, located the object and recovered it and took it away from the site.
So until someone comes forward with irrefutable proof of what fell to Earth on December 9th, 1965, the incident at Kecksburg may forever remain one of the unexplained events in the UFO Diaries.